When he walked into my bedroom that night, he was no longer the man my daughter loved, but a monster I never imagined existed beneath that polite smile. Hello, my dear friends. This is Grandma Matilda, speaking to you from my little home in Savannah, Georgia, at 78 years young. This blessed place that embraced me after so much heartache. Today I'm going to share a story I've kept in my heart for almost 40 years, a story of pain, but also of overcoming. Before I begin, I'd love for you to comment below about how many children and grandchildren you have. It makes me happy to learn about the lives of the dear viewers watching. Also, please subscribe to this channel and leave a like on this video. I was born in 1947 in Cape May, on the New Jersey shore. Those who know it understand it's a little town that seems frozen in time, with those Victorian houses, colorful storefronts, and the ocean gently lapping at the beach. Back then, we couldn't even imagine the tourism it has today. It was a simple place of fishermen and craftspeople, where everyone knew everyone, where children could play in the streets until dusk without worry. My father, Sebastian, was a fisherman. He would leave before dawn in that wooden boat he built himself and return with the sun already high, bringing fresh fish that my mother, Constance, prepared masterfully. Besides taking care of the house and 5 children, I was the youngest. She made preserves that she sold to supplement the family income. To this day, I can smell the apple butter she prepared in the copper pot, stirring for hours until it reached the perfect consistency. It was from her that I learned to make sweets. From a young age, I would stand beside her, watching, helping to cut the fruits, prepare the syrups. Matilda, the secret isn't just in the recipe, but in the love you put into it while you prepare it, she would tell me. And she was right. I never managed to make apple butter equal to hers, even following exactly the same steps. Childhood was simple, but happy. I studied until 4th grade in the only school in town, then had to stop. In those days, for girls like me from humble families, studying was almost a luxury. Why study more? Soon you'll be married and taking care of a house, they would say. That's unfortunately how people thought back then. By 15, I was already helping my mother with preserves and had also learned to make crafts with shells and materials I found on the beach. I made necklaces, earrings, small ornaments that I sold to the few tourists who appeared in town, especially in summer. It was on one of these occasions, selling my necklaces in the square near the church, that I met Anthony. He wasn't from Cape May. He had come from Philadelphia for work. He was a technician for a company that was installing the electrical grid in town. Yes, my dears, back then there were still places in America without electricity. Just imagine what our life was like, only with oil lamps and candles. Anthony was different from the boys I knew. Older, already 25, he had studied, knew the world beyond our little town. He spoke in a way that enchanted me, told stories of places I hadn't even imagined existed. One day I'll take you to see Philadelphia, he promised me, after buying a shell necklace I had made. He would be in Cape May for only 2 months. Time enough for us to fall in love. Against my parents' wishes, who thought he would leave and abandon me, we began to meet in secret. At night, when everyone was asleep, I would escape through the window and we would meet on the beach where we talked for hours under the starry sky. It was on one of those nights, with the sound of the sea as witness, that I gave myself to him for the first time. Young, naive, believing in promises of eternal love. I'll come back for you, he said on the eve of his departure. Wait for me. And I waited, day after day, week after week, until my period was late and panic set in. I was pregnant. At 18, unmarried, in a small town where gossip traveled faster than the wind. My father almost threw me out of the house when I told him. My mother cried for days. That man will never come back, Matilda. You've ruined your life. But to everyone's surprise, Anthony returned. It hadn't just been an empty promise. When he heard about the pregnancy, he did what he considered right. He asked for my hand in marriage. My parents reluctantly accepted. Better a poorly married daughter than an unmarried one with a child, my mother would say, repeating the thinking of the time. We married in a simple ceremony at St. Mary's Church, with my belly already beginning to show under the simple white dress my mother had sewn. Afterwards, we went to live in a small rented house near the harbor. It wasn't big or beautiful, but it was ours. Anthony managed to get a transfer to work in electrical maintenance in Cape May and the surroundings, which meant that sometimes he spent days away in other towns, but he always came back. Louise was born on a warm January night in 1965, a difficult birth at home with the help of a midwife, as was common at the time. When I held her in my arms for the first time, that little piece of humanity with her father's eyes and my nose, I knew that my life would never be the same again. The love I felt was so great, so overwhelming, that all difficulties seemed small in comparison. The first years weren't easy. Anthony earned little. I tried to help by making preserves and crafts between feedings, between changing cloth diapers and washing in the tub. We lived in a rental, dreaming of one day having our own house. Louise grew up strong and clever. From an early age, she showed a curiosity about the world that reminded me of her father. "Mom, why is the sky blue? Mom, where does the sun go at night?" Questions and more questions that often I didn't know how to answer. "She needs to study, Matilda," Anthony would say. "I don't want her to go through what you went through, having to stop schooling so early." And on this we agreed completely. Our daughter would have opportunities we didn't have. When Louise turned 7, we managed to realize a dream, buying a small piece of land on the outskirts of Cape May, where Anthony, with the help of friends, built our own house. It wasn't big, just 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and a bathroom. But it was ours. The yard was spacious, with room for me to plant herbs for my teas and some fruit trees. There we also built a small outdoor kitchen where I made my preserves to sell. It was during this time that Cape May began to change. Tourism grew, the town was discovered for its historical and natural beauty. This opened new opportunities for us. My preserves and crafts became more sought after. Anthony, besides his work at the electric company, began to do small maintenance jobs in the guest houses that were appearing. Louise grew up with the town. Intelligent, dedicated, she was the joy of the school. Unlike me, she had the chance to continue studying. At 16, she was already talking about going to college, dreaming of becoming a teacher. "I don't know who she got all that intelligence from," Anthony would joke, proud of his daughter. "From you, of course," I would reply. And it was true. He might not have studied much, but he had a natural intelligence, a curiosity about the world, a desire to learn that he passed on to our Louise. The years went by. Our life was simple but happy. We worked hard, but we had enough to live with dignity, to give our daughter what she needed. Our little house improved gradually. New flooring here, a coat of paint there, furniture we bought with sacrifice. Anthony even built a second bathroom when Louise entered adolescence. "Women need privacy," he would say, always considerate. When Louise turned 18, the same age I was when she was born, the big news came. She had been accepted to study education at the university in Philadelphia. It was a mixture of joy and sadness. Joy to see her achieve a dream, sadness to know that she would leave home, that we wouldn't have her with us every day anymore. "I'm going to miss you both so much," she said, crying, on the eve of her departure. "We'll miss you too, my daughter," I replied, swallowing my tears. "But this is the natural order of life. Children grow up, gain wings, fly, and parents stay here, cheering for them to fly high and strong." Anthony, always more practical, added, "And remember that Philadelphia isn't so far. You can come back on weekends, during vacations, and we can visit you too." And that's how our Louise left, carrying a suitcase full of dreams and another of preserves that I made so she wouldn't miss home so much. The college years passed quickly. Our daughter would visit us when she could, always full of stories about classes, classmates, life in the big city. It was in her final year of the course that she introduced us to Robert. Tall, handsome, well-dressed, with an educated way of speaking. He was a professor at the university where Louise studied. Older, already 35, he seemed mature, established in life. "It's serious, Mom," Louise confided in me while we prepared lunch in the kitchen. "We're thinking of getting married when I graduate." I confess that I was worried at first. The age difference, he was 15 years older, bothered me a little. And there was something in his gaze, something I couldn't quite define, that made me uneasy. But who was I to question? I had also married young, had also chosen an older man. Anthony, on the other hand, took a liking to Robert from the first moment. Men understand each other, they say. The two would spend hours talking about politics, about America, about the world. Robert had strong opinions, spoke with conviction. Anthony, simpler, quieter, listened to him with admiration. "He'll take good care of our girl," Anthony told me one night, after they went out for a walk around town. "He's a serious man, with a secure future." And so, when Louise graduated in 1987, they got married. A more elaborate ceremony than ours had been, in the same church where we had married so many years before. Louise was radiant in the white dress we bought with such sacrifice. Robert, elegant in his dark suit, seemed the happiest man in the world. The reception was in the yard of our house, decorated with flowers and lights, tables scattered under the trees that Anthony had planted years before. I prepared preserves for days. Friends brought food, drink. It was a simple celebration, but full of love. After the wedding, Louise and Robert went to live in Philadelphia, where he continued teaching at the university, and she got a job as an elementary school teacher. They would visit us a few times a year, at Christmas, during July vacations, occasionally on some extended holiday weekend. Our life returned to what it was before Louise was born. Just Anthony and me, now over 40, taking care of the house, work, each other. I missed my daughter every day, but consoled myself knowing that she was well, building her own life, happy with the man she had chosen. "That's just how it is, Matilda," Anthony would tell me when he caught me sighing with longing. "Children are like birds. We raise them, care for them, teach them to fly, and one day they need to leave the nest. It's part of life." And he was right. It was part of life. What I didn't know, what I couldn't even imagine, was that life was about to play a cruel trick on us, to turn upside down everything we knew, to test our strength in a way I never could have imagined. But that's a story I'll tell you soon in this video. While you wait, leave in the comments what you're doing now as you watch. Do you have a cup of coffee in hand? A cup of tea? And tell me also how many children and grandchildren you have. I want to get to know a little bit about each person who watches me. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It was a sunny Sunday morning in July 1989 when the life I knew collapsed like a sandcastle. Anthony and I had just finished breakfast on the porch, looking at the sea in the distance, making plans for the rest of the day. He wanted to go fishing with some friends. I needed to prepare an order of preserves for a new guest house that had opened in town. "I'll be back before lunch, Matilda," he said, giving me a kiss on the forehead before leaving. That kiss. If I had known it would be the last, I would have held his face between my hands. I would have looked deep into his eyes. I would have said once more how much I loved him. 3 hours later, there was a knock at my door. It was Mr. Jerry, Anthony's fishing buddy. From his face, even before he opened his mouth, I knew something terrible had happened. "Matilda, Anthony had an attack on the boat. A heart attack, it seems. We tried to bring him back quickly, but I didn't hear the rest." A buzzing filled my ears. The world spun around me, and when I came to, I was sitting on the kitchen floor, sobbing in the arms of the neighbor who had come running when she heard my screams. Anthony, my companion of 22 years, my first and only love, my safe harbor, had departed. Just like that, without warning, without goodbye, without me being able to do anything to prevent it. The wake was in the living room of our house, as was customary in town. It seemed like all of Cape May was there. Anthony was beloved, respected. People we didn't even know well appeared to pay their condolences. Louise arrived that night, dissolved in tears, accompanied by Robert. Seeing her was like a knife twisting in my chest. She had her father's eyes, the same way of tilting her head when she was sad. "Mom," was all she managed to say before we fell into each other's arms, sharing a pain that words couldn't express. The burial was the next day. After it was all over, after the last people left the house taking their dishes of food and their words of comfort that didn't comfort, I found myself alone with Louise and Robert. "Come with us to Philadelphia, Mom," Louise insisted. "You can't stay here alone, at least not now." Part of me wanted to accept. The idea of staying in that house full of memories, of sleeping alone in the bed I had shared with Anthony for so long, terrified me. But another part knew that I needed to face grief in my own space, in my own time. I need to stay, daughter. I have the preserve orders. I have my acquaintances here. And your father. His presence is in every corner of this house. I can't abandon that now. Robert, who until then had been quiet, intervened. Let your mother be, Louise. She's right. She needs her own space to process all this. But we can stay a few more days to help organize things. And so they did. They stayed for a week. Louise helped me organize the documents, understand the details of the small pension that Anthony would leave, decide what to do with his clothes and personal belongings. Robert took care of the more bureaucratic matters, bank, notary, paperwork. When they returned to Philadelphia, I felt the emptiness of the house like never before. The nights were the worst. Lying in the bed that now seemed too big, hugging the pillow that still had Anthony's smell, I would cry until I fell asleep from exhaustion. The days dragged on. I would wake up, make my preserves by pure automatism, attend to the few customers who appeared, take care of the house without really seeing what I was doing. It was as if I were living inside a bubble of pain that separated me from the rest of the world. Louise called almost every day. Sometimes Robert would also speak on the phone, asking how I was, if I needed anything. They promised to visit me on the next holiday. September came, bringing that characteristic humid heat of Cape May. 3 months without Anthony. The pain was still there, of course, but gradually I could breathe again, could go a few minutes without thinking about him, without feeling that tightness in my chest. That's when Robert appeared alone. Louise couldn't come, he explained, standing at my door with a small suitcase. Lots of tests to grade, busy start of the semester. But I took a few days off and thought I'd come see how you're doing. At first, I found it strange. Why would he come without Louise? But I soon dismissed the suspicion. He was my son-in-law after all. He was just being attentive, concerned about his widowed mother-in-law. The first days were peaceful. Robert would leave early, saying he was going to get to know the town better, maybe fish a little like Anthony liked to do. He would return in the late afternoon. We would have coffee together on the porch, talk about trivial things. Then the comments began. Small, subtle at first, then increasingly direct. You keep yourself very well for your age, Mrs. Matilda. That dress looks nice on you. It highlights your qualities. Anthony was a lucky man. To have a woman like you so appetizing. I pretended not to understand, changed the subject, retreated earlier to my room. I told myself that I was misinterpreting, that they were just awkward comments from someone trying to be kind. Until the night he brought the wine. To celebrate, he said, opening the bottle on the kitchen table. Celebrate what? I asked, confused. Life, Mrs. Matilda. Anthony wouldn't want you to stay in mourning forever. He would want you to move on, to be happy again. I accepted a small glass, just so as not to seem rude. I didn't usually drink, especially since Anthony had died. The wine went down bitter, leaving a strange taste in my mouth. It's a bit strong, I commented. It's a special wine, he replied, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It will make you relax. After the second glass, I began to feel strangely dizzy with blurred vision. I thought it was the alcohol, but there was something more. A heavy lethargy that took over my body that made my limbs seem made of lead. I think I need to lie down, I mumbled, trying to get up and almost falling. Robert supported me, his arm around my waist, his hand touching parts of my body in a way that made me uncomfortable even in that state of confusion. I'll help you, he said, his voice different now, lower, more dangerous. What happened next comes to my memory in confused flashes, like scenes from a nightmare that I try but can't forget. Robert carrying me to my bedroom. The weight of him on top of me in the bed I shared with Anthony. His rough hands, his breath of wine and cigarettes. My weak attempts to push him away, my slurred voice begging him to stop. The pain, physical and emotional, searing. At some point, merciful darkness swallowed me. I woke up with the sun already high, a ray of light cutting through the room through the gap in the curtain. The first sensation was of pain. Every inch of my body hurt, especially between my legs, where I felt a burning that made me let out an involuntary groan when I tried to move. Then came the awareness of what had happened. The fragmented memories of the previous night fit together like pieces of a macabre puzzle. Robert, the wine, the bedroom, the violation. I tried to get up, but a sharp pain made me fall back onto the bed. I looked at my body and saw the bruises. On my thighs, on my arms, on my chest, the sheets stained with blood. My blood. When I finally managed to reach the bathroom, leaning on the walls, the mirror showed me a face I barely recognized. A swollen eye, a split lip, finger marks on my neck. More than the physical pain, what destroyed me inside was the humiliation, the violation not only of my body, but of trust, of respect, of Anthony's memory. I cried until I had no more tears, sitting on the cold bathroom floor, hugging my own knees like a lost child. Robert had disappeared. The house was empty, silent, now contaminated by the horror of what had happened within its walls. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? Who would believe me? A 42-year-old widow against a respected university professor. Call Louise? How could I tell my only daughter that the man she married, the man she loved, had done this to me? I spent the day in this purgatory of indecision and pain, barely able to move, unable to think clearly. At night, I heard the phone ring in the living room. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th, I dragged myself there, fearing it might be Louise worried. It was her. "Mom, is everything okay? I called several times today." My voice came out hoarse, unrecognizable even to myself. I'm with a strong flu, honey. I've been in bed all day. Robert said you were fine when he left yesterday. He returned to Philadelphia by surprise, said you insisted you were great, that he could go back to work. So that's what he had said, that I was fine, that I had insisted he leave. The lie revolted me almost as much as the act itself. "Honey," I began, not knowing how to continue, how to tell, how to destroy her life along with mine. "Mom, you're scaring me. What is it?" I need you to come. Alone. It's important. Did something happen? Is it about Dad? Did they find some document, some problem with the pension? No, honey, it's something else. Just come, please, as quickly as you can. She arrived the following afternoon, taking the first bus from Philadelphia to Cape May. When I opened the door, her face transformed from worried smile to pure horror upon seeing my condition. "Mom, my God, what happened? Were you robbed? Did you fall?" I did what I hadn't been able to do since I woke up on that infernal morning. I embraced my daughter and cried. I cried as if the world were ending, as if I could expel all the horror through my tears. When I finally calmed down enough to speak, I took her to the kitchen. We sat at the table where we had shared so many family meals, where, just 2 days ago, Robert had offered me that cursed wine. "Honey," I began, holding her hands in mine. "What I'm going to tell you will be difficult to hear, but I need you to listen to the end. I need you to understand that I didn't want to hurt you, never wanted to hurt you, but I can't keep this to myself." And I told her. Every detail I could remember. Every word, every gesture, every pain. I told her about the comments in the previous days, about the wine, about how I felt unable to defend myself, to scream, to flee. I told her about waking up destroyed, about the fear, the shame, the irrational guilt I felt even knowing that the fault was not mine. Louise listened to me in silence, her face passing through a sequence of emotions: shock, disbelief, disgust, fury. When I finished, she was pale, trembling, with cold hands between mine. "Are you sure, Mom?" she finally asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Absolutely sure? Couldn't it have been a nightmare, a confusion because of medication, of wine?" It hurt. It hurt to hear my own daughter question my certainty, insinuate that I could be confused, that I could have imagined something so horrible. But I understood. It was too much to process. It was easier to believe in a misunderstanding than to accept that the man she loved was capable of something so monstrous. "Look at me, honey," I replied, pointing to my swollen face, to the bruises on my arms. "Look at this house. There is blood on my mattress. I am 42 years old, not a child who confuses reality with nightmare. I know what happened. I know what he did." She got up so abruptly that she knocked over the chair. She walked around the kitchen like a caged animal, running her hands through her hair, murmuring incoherent words. Then she stopped, looked at me with a fierce determination that reminded me of Anthony in moments of decision. "We're going to the police. Now." I shook my head. "Honey, who will believe it? It's my word against his, a university professor against a widow from a small town. Besides, he's your husband. Think of the scandal, of what this will do to your life." "To hell with my life," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. He... I can't even say the word. With my own mother, while I was at home, trusting, waiting. He deserves to pay, Mom. He deserves to rot in jail for what he did." At that moment, I saw that my daughter had made her choice. Between her husband and her mother, between the love she thought she had and the brutal truth, she chose to stand by my side. It was as if a weight lifted from my chest, allowing me to truly breathe for the first time since the incident. "What do we do now?" I asked, too exhausted to think clearly. "First, I'm taking you to the hospital. We need to document the injuries, have examinations done. Then we're going to the police station. And meanwhile, I'm going to call him." "Call? For what?" Her eyes glinted with an anger I had never seen before. "To make him confess, to ensure he doesn't escape what he did." And that's how our journey in search of justice began. A journey that would be much longer and more painful than either of us could imagine at that moment. A journey that would test not only our courage, but also the bonds that united us as mother and daughter, as women, as survivors. What we didn't know yet, as we left that house heading to the hospital, was that Robert had already fled. That he had disappeared from Philadelphia, taking what he could carry. That he had left behind not only a devastated wife and a violated mother-in-law, but also other secrets, other victims, other horror stories that we would only discover much later. But at that moment, despite the pain, despite the trauma, there was one thing that gave me strength to move forward. I wasn't alone anymore. My daughter believed me. My daughter chose the truth, however painful it might be. And together, somehow, we would find a way through this darkness. The county hospital in Cape May was small and poorly equipped at that time. The doctor who attended me, Dr. Paul, was the only one on duty that night. I saw in his eyes first surprise, then something like pity, when Louise explained what had happened. "We need to do a physical examination," he said, his voice low as if we were in a church. "But we don't have the proper equipment here. It would be better to go to Atlantic City." An hour on the potholed road. Each jolt was a stab of pain in my already punished body. Louise drove her father's car, now my car, in silence, her knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel so hard. Every now and then, a tear escaped and ran down her face, but she wiped it away quickly, as if she didn't have the right to cry while I was suffering so much more. At the Atlantic City Hospital, the situation was different. A medical examiner, Dr. Martha, examined me with care and respect. She photographed the bruises, collected samples, asked detailed questions that made me relive the horror. But I understood they were necessary. "You have courage," she told me while filling out the forms. "Many women wouldn't have the strength to report it, especially in these circumstances." I didn't feel brave. I felt destroyed, humiliated, as if I had lost something I could never recover. But I looked at my daughter, sitting in the chair beside me, and I knew I needed to continue. For her, for me, for all the women who went through what I went through and couldn't speak up. From the Atlantic City Police Department, they sent us back to Cape May. "The crime occurred in your jurisdiction," they explained. Another hour on the road, arriving close to midnight. The Cape May police station was an old building, poorly lit, with only 2 officers on duty at that hour. The sheriff, a middle-aged man named Silvera, received us with visible impatience. It was late, they were about to end their shift, but when Louise explained the reason for our visit, he straightened in his chair, suddenly more alert. "You're accusing your daughter's husband of rape?" he asked, looking directly at me with an expression that mixed incredulity and something more, something that seemed almost amusement, as if I had told a tasteless joke. "Yes," I replied, forcing my voice to come out firm. "And I have a medical report that proves the violence." He looked at the papers that Louise placed on his desk, flipped through them quickly, without really reading. "You know this is a very serious accusation, don't you? Mr. Robert is a respected man, a university professor. Are you absolutely sure there wasn't some misunderstanding?" Misunderstanding. The same word that Louise had used a few hours before, as if it were possible to confuse a brutal violation with anything else. "Sheriff," my voice came out stronger now, fueled by indignation. "Look at my face. Look at these exams. There is no misunderstanding here. I was drugged and raped by this man in my own house, in the bed where I slept with my husband for more than 20 years. He seemed uncomfortable with my frankness. He cleared his throat, adjusted his tie, looked at his watch. "We'll file the report," he finally said. "But I warn you right now that cases like this are complicated. It's your word against his, and he will probably have a good lawyer." "The truth is on our side," Louise intervened, her voice trembling with contained anger. "And we're going to see this through to the end, no matter how long it takes." We left the police station already in the early morning, with a copy of the report in hand and the vague promise that they would investigate the case. On the way home, Louise told me that she had tried to call Robert several times, but the phone just gave a busy signal. "He unplugged it, I'm sure," she said. "He must be fleeing at this very moment." She was right. When we finally managed to speak with a neighbor the next day, she confirmed. Robert had arrived home in the early afternoon, packed in a hurry and left with the car. He told the neighbor he had a family emergency in Boston. "Coward," Louise murmured, hanging up the phone. "Disgusting coward." The days that followed were a blur of pain, shame, and bureaucracy. More visits to the police station, more questions, some so invasive and unnecessary that they made me want to give up everything. But I didn't give up. Each time I thought of retreating, I remembered Robert's face, the weight of him on top of me, and the anger gave me strength to continue. A week later, the first bombshell. Robert had been located in Hartford, at a friend's house. When the police arrived to arrest him, he denied everything. He said I had made advances towards him, that I was needy after widowhood, that I had become furious when he rejected me. The marks on my body? I had made them myself, he said, to incriminate him. Or perhaps another man, some secret lover. "How can he lie like this?" I cried on Louise's shoulder. "How can he invert everything this way?" "That's what they do, Mom," she replied, her voice hard as stone. "They try to transform the victim into the guilty one, but we won't let them. We'll fight." And we fought. Against the slow and patriarchal judicial system, against the looks of distrust, against the whispers in town, the veiled questions, the insinuations. Why was she alone with her son-in-law? Maybe she regretted it afterwards. So soon after her husband's death. Words like stones, thrown by people we thought knew us, who respected our family. I discovered in the worst possible way how a community that seemed so united could turn against you at the moment you most needed support. A few weeks after the complaint, we were at the market when I clearly heard a woman say to another, "It's her, the one who made advances on her daughter's husband, and now says she was raped." I felt as if I had been slapped. I left the groceries in the middle of the aisle and ran out, without looking back, without being able to breathe properly. Louise found me sitting on the curb, shaking like a leaf. "I can't take it anymore, honey," I said between sobs. "I can't stand the looks, the comments. How can they believe him and not me? How can they think I would do something like this to you, to your family?" It was at this moment, at my lowest point, that Louise made a decision that would change our lives forever. "Let's leave here, Mom. Let's start over somewhere else, where no one knows us, where we don't have to go through this every day. And the process? Justice? We'll continue fighting from a distance. We'll come for the hearings when necessary. But we can't stay here, Mom. It's destroying you. It's destroying us." She was right. Cape May, the town I had loved all my life, had transformed into a prison of accusing glances and cutting words. Each corner held a memory, now poisoned by suspicion, by doubt, by betrayal not just from Robert, but from an entire community that chose the easier side. The decision of where to go came in an unexpected way. A TV report about Savannah, Georgia, showing the historic cities, the rich culture, the local craftsmanship. Savannah, in particular, caught my attention. With its colorful houses, its ancient churches, its river winding between verdant hills. It seemed like Cape May in many ways, but at the same time completely different. A new beginning. It's far, Louise commented when I mentioned the idea. More than a 2-day trip. All the better, I replied. The farther, the less chance that someone will find us, that the stories will follow us. It took almost 2 months to organize everything. I sold the house, for less than it was worth, but we needed the money quickly. I also sold most of the furniture, keeping only some precious memories of Anthony that I couldn't abandon. The lawyer we hired for the case against Robert, with the life savings that Anthony and I had kept for old age, assured us that we could follow the case from a distance, returning only for essential testimonies. In early 1990, we departed. A small truck with our few possessions, Louise and I in the car, leaving behind the town that had been our home, carrying wounds that still bled and fragile hopes of a fresh start. The journey was long and tiring, but also therapeutic in a way. With each mile that took us farther from Cape May, it seemed that a little of the weight lifted from our shoulders. We talked a lot during those hours on the road, about the past, about the future, about how we would rebuild our lives from the pieces that Robert had left behind. We arrived in Savannah on a February evening. The sun was setting behind the hills, tinting the sky orange and pink, reflecting on the Savannah River that cut through the city. The colorful houses, the cobblestone streets, the historic churches, everything seemed to welcome us, offering the promise of better days. We had rented a small house near the historic district through a real estate agency with whom we exchanged letters for weeks. It was simple but welcoming, with a backyard where I soon imagined planting herbs for my teas, perhaps even setting up a small kitchen to make preserves as I had in Cape May. The first days were about adaptation. The Georgian heat was different from New Jersey's, drier, more intense. The accent of the people, the food, the customs, everything required a period of adjustment. But gradually, we integrated. Louise got a job as a teacher at a local elementary school. I started making preserves to sell, first door to door, then to some small shops of typical products for tourists. Meanwhile, the case against Robert followed its slow and tortuous course. We traveled back to Cape May 3 times in that first year for hearings and testimonies. Each return was painful. The looks, the whispers were still there. But now they were more bearable, because we knew we had a place to return to, a refuge away from that poison. It was during one of these trips, in August 1990, that the turning point in the case occurred. We were in the waiting room of the courthouse when a woman timidly approached us. She was around 30, brown hair tied in a ponytail, restless eyes that couldn't fix on ours. "You're Mrs. Matilda and Louise, aren't you?" she asked in a low voice, as if afraid of being heard. We confirmed, confused and a little apprehensive. "My name is Teresa," she continued. I was also a victim of Robert." Those words fell like a bomb between us. Teresa told us, right there in the waiting room, how she had been a student of Robert's at the university 3 years earlier, how he had invited her for coffee to discuss her thesis, how he had put something in her drink, how she had woken up naked and hurt in a cheap motel. "I never reported it," she said, tears now flowing freely. "I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, afraid he would ruin my academic life, afraid of the shame. But when I heard about your case, when I read it in the newspaper, I couldn't stay silent. Not again." Teresa wasn't the only one. In the months that followed, 2 more women came forward with similar stories. A former colleague, a neighbor from Philadelphia. Different ages, different circumstances, but the same pattern: drugged drinks, blurred consciousness, sexual violence. Suddenly, it wasn't just my word against his anymore. It was 4 women, 4 stories, 4 sets of evidence pointing to a serial predator who had spent years attacking vulnerable women, relying on the silence imposed by fear and shame. The case took on a new dimension. Regional newspapers began to cover the predator professor, as he was nicknamed. The police reopened previous investigations that had been shelved for lack of evidence. Robert, who had been responding to charges while free, had his preventive detention ordered. But he had already fled again. This time, it was believed, abroad. "We're going to catch that bastard," the new prosecutor of the case assured us. "Now we have an established pattern. We have witnesses. We have strong evidence. It's just a matter of time. Time. That word that is sometimes our greatest ally, sometimes our worst enemy. The time that heals wounds, but also the time that allows criminals to escape, evidence to be lost, memories to blur. For us, in Savannah, time began to work in our favor. With each passing day, the pain became a little less acute, the memories a little less vivid. They never completely disappeared. Some scars are permanent. But we learned to live with them, to not let them define who we were. In August 1991, exactly 1 year after Teresa approached us at the courthouse, we received the news. Robert had been arrested in Mexico, trying to board a flight to Guatemala with false documents. He would be extradited to the United States to face the accusations. The trial, in January 1992, was one of the most difficult and at the same time most liberating moments of my life, having to report again, in detail, what had happened on that terrible night, facing the gazes, some of compassion, others still of doubt. Hearing the defense attorney try to discredit us suggests that we were all liars, opportunists, unbalanced. But this time it was different. This time we weren't alone. We were 4 women united by pain, but also by the courage to speak, to demand justice. And we had the support of women's groups from Philadelphia who had heard about the case and came to show solidarity, ensuring that the press covered the trial fairly. When the judge announced the sentence, 15 years in prison for aggravated rape, with additional penalties for abuse of trust and premeditation, I felt something break inside me. It wasn't exactly joy. How could there be joy in something so tragic? But a kind of liberation, a weight that lifted from my shoulders, a cloud that dissipated, allowing the sun to shine again. That night, back at the hotel in Cape May, Louise and I opened a bottle of wine. Ironically, the drink that had been used to drug me. But this time, it was a symbol of reclaiming, of power recovered. To justice, we toasted, not just for Robert's conviction, but for all the small and large victories we had won throughout those terrible years. The courage to report, the strength to start over, the resilience to keep fighting when everything seemed lost. And to new beginnings, I added, thinking about our new life in Savannah, the friendships we were building there, the possibilities that opened before us now that this shadow was finally beginning to dissipate. The path would still be long. The wounds, especially those of the soul, would take much longer to heal completely, if they ever would. But at that moment, we knew that the worst had passed, that we had faced the monster and somehow emerged victorious. The next day we returned to Savannah, leaving behind not just Cape May, but also the darkest chapter of our lives. It was time to look forward, to rebuild, to find joy again in a world that, despite everything, still had much to offer. Savannah welcomed us with open arms, as if that historic city knew we needed healing. We returned from the trial with a strange sensation, a mix of relief and exhaustion, like someone who finishes a long battle and only then realizes how wounded they are. Our little rented house in the historic district gained new meanings after that February 1992. It was no longer just a temporary refuge, but the place where we would really begin to live again. I painted the walls light yellow, planted flowers in the small front garden, hung colorful curtains I bought at the local market. Each small touch was an affirmation. We are here, we are alive, we are starting over. The Georgian heat, so different from that of Cape May, became familiar. Waking up with the sun coming through the windows, the smell of coffee mixed with the aromas of the nearby market, the sound of birds nesting in the trees in the yard. Small daily blessings that I would hardly have noticed before, but that now meant a lot. The ability to feel pleasure in simple things again. Louise dedicated herself fully to the school where she taught. The students adored her, the parents respected her, the principal always commented on her dedication. That new teacher, the preserve maker's daughter, is a gift to our community, I once heard at the market. My chest swelled with pride. After everything we went through, seeing my daughter flourish was like a balm for the soul. As for me, my preserves began to gain fame in the region. I started with an improvised stand at the Sunday fair, selling peach cobbler, lemon squares, and honey cakes. Soon, small orders came in, for birthday parties, baptisms, even weddings. In 6 months, I could no longer handle everything alone in the small kitchen at home. It was Miss Zelda, a lady I met at church, who suggested I rent my own space. "With the talent you have, Mrs. Matilda, you deserve a real store. I know an empty spot near the city market. It belongs to my friend. I can introduce you." The place was perfect. An old house with thick walls, with a room in front that would serve as a store and a spacious kitchen in the back. The rent was a bit above what I had planned to spend, but I decided to risk it. I used part of the savings we brought from Cape May to renovate the space and buy basic equipment: an industrial stove, molds, utensils. In July 1992, we inaugurated Matilda's Sweets. I decorated the little shop with lace tablecloths made by local artisans, painted the walls light blue with yellow details, placed flower vases in the corners. On the facade, a carved wooden sign by a local artist showed the name of the store with designs of southern fruits. The opening day was a small celebration. Louise invited colleagues from school, neighbors appeared out of curiosity. Even the pastor from the Baptist church passed by to give a blessing. I served samples of various preserves, fresh coffee, peach liqueur that I learned to make with Miss Zelda. People smiled, complimented, promised to return. And they did. In the months that followed, the store gained loyal customers. Tourists visiting Savannah, attracted by the historical heritage and southern charm, stopped by to taste my specialties and left carrying little packages to take as souvenirs. Local merchants began to order preserves to resell in their own shops and inns. Soon, I needed help. I hired 2 local women, Janet and Connie, to assist me in production. I taught them the secrets I learned from my mother. Adapted to southern ingredients: peach cobbler with pecans, lemon squares with a touch of honey, sweet potato pie with fresh coconut. "You brought a piece of the North to our South, but with our flavor," Janet said one day while learning to make apple butter. That phrase touched me deeply. It was exactly what I was trying to do with my life. Bring what was good from the past, but transform, adapt, create something new from the scars. Louise also flourished. In 1993, she was promoted to pedagogical coordinator of the school. We moved to a larger, more comfortable house, with a porch that had a view of the Savannah River. On Sunday afternoons, we would sit there with iced tea, watching the little boats passing by, the families gathering on the banks for picnics, the simple and genuine life of that community that had welcomed us. It was on one of these afternoons, in April 1994, that Louise told me about John. "He's a history teacher at the school, Mom. He came from Charleston 6 months ago. He's a widower, has a 5-year-old daughter, Clara." I noticed something different in her gaze when she talked about him. A sparkle I hadn't seen since the times before Robert. I confess I felt afraid. After everything we went through, the idea of Louise getting involved with another man terrified me. What if he was another monster disguised as a prince? "Have you known him long enough, honey?" I asked, trying not to sound too alarmed. "Do you know about his past? About his family?" She smiled, understanding. She knew exactly what I was thinking. "I do, Mom. I asked all the questions you're imagining. I talked to people who knew him in Charleston with the family of his late wife. He's a good man, Mom, honest, kind, and he understands our story. I told him everything." "And how did he react?" I asked, apprehensive. "With compassion, without judgments. He said he admires our courage and that he hopes one day to completely deserve my trust." Still, it took me time to accept the idea. When I finally met John, a few weeks later, at a dinner at our house, I observed every gesture, every word, every look. I was looking for signs, clues of anything that might indicate danger. But what I saw was just a simple man, soft-spoken with gentle eyes, who treated Louise with almost reverential respect, and his little daughter, Clara, with genuine love. Little Clara won my heart almost immediately. A clever girl, with curly hair and an easy smile, who lost her mother so early to cancer and still maintained a contagious joy. When she approached timidly and asked if I could teach her to make preserves like those in the pretty shop, I felt something inside me melt. Louise and John's relationship progressed with caution, exactly as it should. Outings with Clara on weekends, family dinners, long conversations on the porch under the Georgian moonlight. She was allowing herself to love again, but this time with eyes wide open, without the youthful rush of before. In December of that year, John asked her to marry him. It wasn't anything grandiose, just a simple request during a picnic by the river, with Clara as a witness holding a little flower she had picked specially for the occasion. Louise said yes, but with one condition: a long engagement of at least a year. "I want to be absolutely sure, Mom," she explained to me later, "not just for me, but for Clara. She's already lost one mother. I can't enter her life if it's not to stay." I admired my daughter's maturity. At 29, she had a wisdom that I didn't possess even at 40. The trials had forged in her a discernment, a caution that, ironically, perhaps protected her more than any advice I could give. The year 1995 was one of preparations, not just for the wedding, which would be simple, but for the new life that was taking shape. John sold his small house on the outskirts of Savannah and, together with Louise, bought a larger plot where they would build gradually. I helped them as I could, investing part of the profits from the store that was growing more and more. Meanwhile, Clara spent more and more time with me. She would come to the store after school, sit on a high stool in the kitchen and watch me work, asking 1,000 questions, wanting to help with everything. Gradually, she became my granddaughter of the heart, long before any paper made it official. "Grandma Matilda, can I stir the preserves?" she would ask, her eyes shining with expectation. "Grandma." The first time she called me that, I felt tears in my eyes. I never imagined I would be a grandmother this way, through the twisted paths that life had led us. But there she was, this child who needed love as much as I needed to give love, filling a space in my heart that I didn't know was empty. The wedding took place in February 1996, exactly 1 year after the proposal. It was a simple ceremony in the historic Baptist church in Savannah, followed by a celebration in the yard of the couple's new house, still under construction, but already with the roof and main walls erected. I insisted on preparing all the sweets: a bountiful table with lemon squares, peach cobbler, cakes, preserves, all made with my own hands as a gift for my daughter. Janet and Connie took care of the store so that I could devote myself totally to the preparations in the previous days. It was a day of genuine joy without shadows. Seeing Louise at the altar, radiant in a simple but elegant lace dress, beside a man who looked at her with sincere admiration, I felt that we were finally really leaving the past behind. Not forgetting, we could never completely forget, but moving forward, rebuilding, transforming the scars into marks of a battle won. Clara, beautiful in a light blue dress, carried the rings with a comic seriousness for a 7-year-old child. When the pastor declared Louise and John husband and wife, she gave a little jump of joy that drew smiles from all those present. The celebration lasted until dawn. Neighbors, colleagues from school, customers from the store, friends we had made over those years in Savannah, all celebrating not just a union, but a new beginning, a victory over adversity. At some point during the night, when the moon was already high in the sky and the sound of a local jazz trio lulled the guests, I found myself thinking of Anthony. What would he say if he could see our daughter at this moment? How would he feel knowing everything we went through since his departure? "He would be proud," a voice inside me answered. "Proud of the strength of you both, of the dignity with which you faced the worst and built something new and beautiful from the ruins." This certainty brought me a peace I hadn't felt for a long time. As if, somehow, Anthony was there, blessing that moment, approving the choices we had made, the paths we had taken. The years that followed were ones of consolidation of this new life. The store prospered. I even opened a second unit in the tourist center of Savannah in 1998. Louise became pregnant in 1997, giving birth to little Michael, my first biological grandson, a boy with lively eyes who had the smile of the grandfather he never knew. Clara, now officially my granddaughter too, grew up strong and intelligent, always divided between school and helping at the sweet shop, which she already declared would one day be hers. "I'm going to make preserves even better than yours, Grandma," she would say, with the absolute confidence of youth, and I didn't doubt it. As the new millennium approached, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had been my life until then. From the cobblestone streets of Cape May to the colorful hills of Savannah. From youthful love for Anthony to the horror at Robert's hands, and finally to the peace of seeing my daughter happy, my grandchildren growing up healthy, my business thriving. In December 1999, at the turn to the year 2000, we organized a big party at Louise and John's house, now completely built and made into a welcoming home. As I observed my family gathered, Louise, John, teenage Clara, little Michael with his 2 years running everywhere, I felt a deep, almost painful gratitude. We had survived. More than that, we had triumphed. The wounds would never completely disappear. I still had occasional nightmares. There were still certain triggers that made me tremble involuntarily. But we had rebuilt our lives, stone by stone, with a patience and resilience that I never knew I possessed until I was forced to find them within me. Savannah was no longer just a temporary refuge, as we initially thought. It had become our true home, a place where we were accepted without judgments, where we could start over without the shadows of the past chasing us around every corner. The people here knew us in the present, not by the trauma we carried, but by what we were capable of creating and offering. At midnight, when fireworks exploded announcing the new millennium, I raised my glass in a silent toast. To the past that forged us, to the present we built with so much effort, to the future that opened before us like a road illuminated by the sun. The journey hadn't been easy. There were moments when I thought I wouldn't survive the pain, the humiliation, the injustice. Moments when the burden seemed too heavy to carry. But each step, each decision, each small victory brought us here, to a life that despite the scars, or perhaps because of them, was worth living fully. And when Clara approached, her 11 years full of expectations for the new century that was beginning, and asked, "What are you thinking about, Grandma?" I answered, with the simple truth that I had learned the hard way. "I'm thinking, my dear, that sometimes we need to lose almost everything to discover what we're really made of, and that life, as cruel as it can be at times, also offers us second chances, new beginnings, if we have the courage to seek them." She hugged me, without fully understanding the weight of those words, but feeling their importance. And in that embrace, with fireworks coloring the sky and my family gathered around, I knew that I had finally come home, not just to a physical place, but to a state of peace that I thought I would never find again. The path of reconstruction hadn't been linear or easy. It had obstacles, setbacks, moments of doubt, but each piece of what we built, the store, the house, the friendships, the extended new family, was authentic, was ours, was the fruit not only of pain, but of the refusal to let pain have the last word. And perhaps that is the greatest victory of all, transforming trauma not into a perpetual prison, but into a chapter of a much larger story. A story that continues to unfold, page after page, with colors, flavors, and joys that no one, not even Robert, with all his cruelty, could take from us permanently. Today, sitting on the porch of my little house in Savannah, watching the sun set over the river with its shades of orange and red that I never tire of admiring, I realize how much time has passed. I am 78 now, with completely white hair that I don't bother to dye, hands marked by time and by work with sugar and fruits for decades. Matilda's Sweets has become a traditional spot in the city, now mainly managed by Clara, my granddaughter of the heart, who inherited not only my recipes, but also my determination. At 36, she expanded the business, created new recipes, mixing northern and southern traditions, took our preserves to food fairs in Atlanta, New York, even abroad. It all started with Grandma, she always says, when interviewed about the success of the business. These words fill me with a pride that frightened young woman fleeing Cape May could never have imagined she would feel one day. Louise and John remain together, a partnership that has only strengthened with the years. She recently retired as principal of the school where she began as a simple teacher. He continues teaching history, inspiring new generations with his knowledge and kindness. When I see them together, sharing coffee on the porch, exchanging knowing looks after almost 3 decades together, I feel a deep peace. My daughter found true, respectful love, the one she deserved from the beginning. Michael, my biological grandson, now 28, followed a path that surprised us all. He graduated in law and specialized in cases of violence against women. "It was because of your story, Grandma," he told me when he decided on this career. "So that other women don't have to fight as hard as you and Mom fought to get justice. I've already had the joy of seeing my great-grandchildren born, the twins Anthony and Matilda, Clara's children, tributes to my husband and me, and little Louise, Michael's daughter, who continues the tradition of keeping family names alive. I often reflect on the journey that brought me here. Not just the events, the loss of Anthony, the violence of Robert, the escape to Georgia, the reconstruction, but what I learned from each moment, each challenge, each small or large victory. The first and perhaps most important lesson: we are much stronger than we imagine. There is a reserve of courage within us that we only discover when all other options are exhausted. When I think of that terrible night when Robert destroyed my trust, my security, my dignity, and then of the long path I've traveled since then, I almost don't recognize that broken woman who woke up alone, hurt, not knowing what to do. Somehow, I found the strength to get up, to fight, to start over. The second lesson: the importance of believing victims. When the people in Cape May doubted me, when they suggested that I had provoked or consented and then regretted it, each word of disbelief was like a new blow. But when Teresa and the other women appeared, when we finally formed a network of mutual support, we found not only the strength to face the judicial system, but also to begin to heal our emotional wounds. That's why, whenever I hear about a similar case, I make a point of saying out loud, "I believe you." The third lesson: it's never too late to start over. At 42, I left behind everything I knew, my hometown, my house, my roots, to seek a new beginning thousands of miles away. I had only my daughter, some savings, and a lot of fear for the future. Today, 3 decades later, I have an extended family, a prosperous business, dear friends, and a community that welcomed me as if I had always belonged here. The fourth lesson: the transformative power of work and creativity. Making preserves wasn't just a means of survival for me. It was therapy. It was connection to my roots. It was a way to transform simple ingredients into something that brought joy to other people. On the hardest days, when the memory of trauma threatened to paralyze me, it was in the kitchen, with my hands in the dough, that I found peace. Each perfect sweet that came out was a small victory against chaos. The fifth and perhaps deepest lesson: evil exists. It is real. Sometimes it comes disguised with a friendly face and a polite smile. But good also exists, and in the end, it has more resistance, more strength. Robert almost destroyed our lives, but look at what we built despite him. Perhaps even because of him. A stronger family, a support community, a legacy of love and work that already reaches the 4th generation. Recently, I learned through old news that Robert died in prison in 2001, after serving only 9 of the 15 years of his sentence. A heart attack, they say. Ironically, the same cause that took my Anthony. I didn't feel joy at the news, nor sadness, just a strange relief, as if a chapter could finally be completely closed. I thought I would feel more, perhaps renewed anger, perhaps bitter satisfaction. But the truth is that long ago, Robert ceased to have power over my thoughts, my feelings, my life. He became just a turned page in a much larger and more beautiful book. And perhaps that is the greatest victory of all, living a life so full, so rich in love and purpose, that those who tried to destroy us become irrelevant. Not forgotten. I will never forget what happened, but reduced to a footnote in the much larger story of my existence. My dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, please leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Each subscription gives me strength to continue sharing these memories, which aren't always easy to relive, but which can help someone going through difficult times. A loving embrace from Grandma Matilda, who learned that the scars we carry don't define who we are, but what we choose to do with them. Yes, today, I choose to be happy. I choose to celebrate each day as a gift. I choose to see beauty even in the most unlikely places. It is this choice, renewed each dawn, that brought me here, and that can take you much further than you ever imagined.